Hey everyone, Griff Hamlin here. Welcome and thanks for joining me today. In today's video, I want to talk about stuff you can do if you have trouble with what I call the blues in E rhythm. And you probably know this idea. And if you don't, there's other videos with this. But it's that sort of back and forth movement that we associate with the blues often. Now, if you do it in E like that, it's no problem because it's what we call an open position. If you do it in A, it's also easy because it's an open position. We have an open string. Even with D. Okay, now if we play blues in E, we have E and then we have an A, and at some point we have B, which is a closed position. And this is where things start to get crazy for a lot of people. There's a lot of people, for whatever reason, simply can't make this stretch. So you'll notice that I'm stretching my pinky from the 4th to the 6th fret. And that's a real challenge, understandably so. So if you're just playing a blues in E, and the only one that you're having trouble with is the B, that's the 5 chord, okay? So we can very easily work around that by simply not doing that particular rhythm figure. The term rhythm figure is, what we are playing for a certain chord. So if we say we're playing an E chord, well, the rhythm figure that we're using is this blues in E pattern. Right? So that same pattern could go for the B. But if you can't do it, well, you're only going to probably be playing this chord in the key of E for 1 bar. So you might just not do it. Okay, that's one way to handle it. Just don't do it. Or we might use the open B. Okay, or maybe even a bar B7 might be easier. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then when we get to the A, we go back to our idea. And then maybe when we get back here, since we're building up, it makes sense. Okay, so in that situation where it's only 1 bar, just don't do it. Just play without that movement, and you can accent it in how you strum. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3. So you can still accent the beat, right? One of the main purposes of that rhythm figure is that it really drives the rhythm. Okay, and without it, if you're playing with a band, you probably wouldn't even use that rhythm. But if it's just you or it's just you and a buddy, then yeah, you're going to use that rhythm because it's going to drive the beat, and that's important. You can still do that without that motion, without that move between the 4th fret and the 6th fret, the pinky stretch. You can still create the motion, by your right hand, your strumming hand. If you're left-handed, I guess it'd be your left hand, but your strumming hand. Now, what if, however, you are for some reason playing a blues in F? All right, so now all of a sudden, every chord would be here. Or F sharp, or G sharp. If you're an A, you're back in an open position. But let's say you're doing a G, and there's your 4, right? Now your 5, you could do in an open position. But we got a whole lot we got to deal with, right? So there's a couple of options. If you don't do any movement, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, it's going to get a little bit tedious. It's going to, especially if you're doing that for 4 bars, as you would likely be. That's just going to get a little tedious. So a couple of options. You can throw in something at some point. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. You could use that idea. So from here, I have my 7th chord, but I'm just playing the low end of it. So again, that's creating a situation where my palm on my picking hand is sort of keeping things under control for me. I have a little bit of pressure there. So I have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And that's basically like a C power chord. I'm just barring across the 5th fret on the 3rd and 4th strings. And then the 3rd fret on the 3rd and 4th strings. So I have 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4. Now, of course, that is a different rhythm figure. That there's no doubt. That's a completely different idea. It'll still work. It'll still, carry the momentum. It'll still give the idea of the G7 chord. It'll do what you need it to do, but it's a different idea. But it doesn't require the stretch. Now, you can get a little bit funky, okay, depending on what your reason is for not being able to play. Instead of playing these 2 notes like this, okay, so right now I'm playing a G and a D. A low G and a D. I could actually switch and play a low G and a D, but notice that I now have to pluck it, but because I'm skipping a string. Let's say I did that in A. It looks a little more like this. Okay, so what I'm doing right now is my pick is playing the A at the 5th fret of the 6th string with my pinky. Could do it with my 3rd finger. It's a little bit of a challenge. It's a little bit easier if you go up to like a B. But I would use my pinky. Now, this may or may not be any easier for you, depending on what it is that's limiting you from making that stretch in the first place. But I can, if I use my pick and a finger to get the 4th string. So right now, I'll do it in B here. So I've got my pinky on the 7th fret of the 6th string. I've got my 1st finger. I'm actually going to bar it across the 4th and 3rd strings at the 4th fret, but you only have to do the 4th string. I just like to get them both. I'm going to use my pick on my picking hand for the lowest note. I'm going to use my middle finger for the upper note. If you want, you can also use your ring finger to get that other note if you're barring it. I happen to really like that sound. So now I'm kind of, clawing it. Okay. Now, don't knock that till you try it. I know it probably looks like, well, good Lord, that's more difficult than playing it the other way. It is and it's not. I actually find that there are many instances where that is not as uncomfortable as it appears, and in fact, it's more comfortable than the alternative, than this, for me. Again, it depends. If you have some sort of, maybe there's an arthritis condition or there's some sort of reason that you can't make that stretch, that option may or may not be any easier for you. But if you, don't knock it till you try it. Give it a try. And you get pretty good at that. Okay. Now, there's another option that involves some sliding, and this is basically to give you the illusion of making that move without actually making that move. So what I'm going to do, let's say again that I'm in G. Instead of stretching my pinky out, I'm going to drag my 3rd finger up and I'm going to relax my 1st finger, and it's going to kill that low string. Now this is probably you're not gonna be able to go super fast. But you might, you might get pretty good at it. Okay, and you can kind of get away with that. One other thing you can do is do what's called an octave displacement. This is really the only other option that I've ever come up with, is to take the lowest note and swap it with the note up here. It's an octave away. Okay, so now this low G is going to get moved up to this G here at the 5th fret of the 4th string. And I'm going to bar and grab the D that I had before. So the D note stays the same, the G note goes up by an octave. And now it's an upside down interval, but it allows me to, bar those two. I have to be very careful with my pick though. Again, you might want to pluck so you don't miss it. So if I do that, now when I add this other finger, or it could be the pinky, whatever's more comfortable to you, I have to be careful not to not to touch the fourth string and mute it out. But it does allow for some kind of cool stuff. I can actually add that extra note. Now that does require a small bar across the fourth and the fifth strings. And like I said, you have to be careful because you will likely also push on the third string whether you like it or not. And so if I strum it, you'll hear it. So try and remember to kind of pulse your finger. Don't ever lift it off the strings because you don't want them to ring, but relax to the point that it mutes them out. And I can do the C that way. And this is basically the same idea as what I talked about earlier with that low note, just without that low note. So if, for whatever reason, you really struggle to make that move, hopefully one of those options is something that will fit within what's comfortable to you in your hand. Now, as I always say, if that move is difficult for you for no medical reason or no reason other than it's just hard, the trick is always to get the guitar up. Like if I put it on my leg this way and bring it up right close to my face, it's easy because now my wrist has dropped. Okay, if I put it on my other leg, perhaps, I have to get my foot up higher to do that. My footstool isn't high enough, but that's a whole lot easier to do than if the guitar's, way down here. I can do this because I've been doing this for 30 years, but if you're new to that technique, you really want to make it as easy on yourself as possible. The higher up you get that guitar, if you hold it like this, if you lay it on your lap, it's super easy, right? But you can't play that way. So what we want to do is get as close to this as possible, right? So if you're struggling for no reason other than it's just hard, it's guaranteed to be your posture. And if you get the guitar up, set it nice and straight, or get more over it as opposed to leaning back and get the guitar up nice and high, you'll find it to be a whole lot easier. So hopefully these tips can help you and get you going in the right direction and get the sound maybe without that difficult stretch for whatever reason. So hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope you get something out of it, and I'll talk to you soon.